Hello everyone, my name is Grethe, also known as Sandalsticks Theatre, and I'm absolutely delighted to be part of the Istanbul International Storytelling Festival. Thank you very much for inviting me. This evening I'll be telling two stories from separate branches of mythology. One story from Norse mythology and the other story from Greek mythology. The first story is all about Thor, as we say in Danish. I'm actually part Danish. As you see around my neck, I've got a pendant. It's Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, which is a symbol of strength and protection. So without further ado, let's get to it. Legend has it that in the sky there was a mighty ash tree called Yggdrasil. No one knew how it came to be, but it brought all the worlds together in a wonderful circle of life. One root went deep down into Hel, the land of the dead. Another root attached itself to Jotunheim, the land of the giants. A third root grasped Midgård, the home of the human race, and the crown spread over Asgard and Valhalla, the home of the gods. Now there are many stories about the gods. You may have heard of Odin, the king of the Norse gods, and you might also have heard of Thor, the Norse god of strength, thunder and lightning. In fact, the saying goes, when thunder and lightning is in the air, it is Thor who's swinging his hammer Mjolnir over his head. So powerful was this hammer that it was said that it could break a mountain in two. So, let me now tell you the story of how Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, came to be. One day, Thor's beautiful wife, Sif, was relaxing in the sunshine, a very strong and powerful goddess. Now, she was famous for her long, thick, shiny golden hair, and she had just fallen asleep with the sun shining on her pretty face when Loki, the cunning, shape-shifting trickster god, walked past. Now Loki, he fancied Sif, and he was terribly jealous of Thor for having married her. And Loki, well, he never saw anything beautiful without having a burning wish to spoil it, so he took out a pair of scissors and he went snippy, snappy, snippy, snappy, cut, cut, cut. He cut off all of Sif's hair and he took it away. When Sif awoke, she was absolutely horrified to see all her hair gone, and she ran away and hid behind a tree. Thump, 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 thump. Thor was coming back from one of his many trips. Thump, thump, thump. Sif? Oh, Sif, where are you? Sif? Thor could hear crying, and he followed the sound, and he found his beloved Sif sitting behind a tree, crying and cursing with rage and with no hair. Thor was quiet for about 5 seconds, and then he roared. I know who did this. It is that rascal Loki. Oh, I will break every single bone in his shape-shifting body. And so Thor, he stormed off and he found Loki lying in the grass. He seized him by the neck and was just about to kill him when Loki said, I get the dwarfs to make a beautiful crown of golden hair for Sif. More beautiful than her old hair. Thor let go of his grip, and Loki wasted no time and went deep underground to the smithy of the dwarfs called Eyvild's sons, and he begged them to help him. And in no time the dwarfs produced a crown of golden hair which shone like 1,000 stars, and because they were so good, they also made the spear Gugner, which never misses its mark, and a ship called Skidbladner. And with these treasures, Loki marched back into Asgard and boasted of what he'd acquired from the smithy of Eyvild's sons. And he said, the sons of Eyvild are the best to work in metal. All the other dwarves are stupid compared to them. Yeah. Now, The dwarf Brock was standing nearby, and he'd heard Loki bragging. Now, Brock, he had a brother called Sindri, who was such a skilled craftsman that he was thought to be the best in the world. And to hear Loki bragging like that, well, it made Brock angry, very angry indeed. And he said, "My brother Sindri can make more wonderful things of gold and brass than the sons of Ivold ever thought of." "Well, in that case, my dear Brock, let's have a competition. Go to your brother Sindri and ask him to make 3 items better than the crown, better than the spear, and better than the ship. Now, if he can do that, you can have my head for your troubles." Yeah. Brock agreed, and so he went underground to find his brother Sindri hard at work in his smithy. He explained the deal he'd done with Loki, and Sindri set straight to work. He asked Brock to blow the bellows into the furnace with all his might, and then he put a swineskin into the fire. And he asked Brock to blow the bellows without stopping at any point, and he went to get something. And Brock blew and blew and blew. Bzzz. 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 There was a wasp in the smithy. Bzzz. And it landed on Brock's hand and it stung him. Oh, it was so painful. But Brock, he was a faithful dwarf and he'd been instructed not to stop at any point, and he kept blowing the bellows till Sindri's return. When Sindri returned, he pulled a wild boar out of the furnace, a wild pig with golden bristles. Then Sindri put some gold into the fire and asked Brock to blow the bellows, and Sindri went to get something. Bzzz, bzzz, the wasp was back. Bzzz, 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 and this time it landed on Brock's neck and it stung him. Oh, it was painful, but Brock, he kept blowing the bellows till Sindri's return. And this time, out of the furnace, Sindri pulled a shiny golden ring. Then Sindri put some iron into the furnace and he went to get something. And Brock blew the bellows. Bzzz, 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 the wasp was back. Bzzz, bzzz, and this time, bzzz, it went straight into Brock's eye, bzzz, and it stung him 1, 2, 3 times. Oh, it was so painful, and blood trickled down Brock's face, and he stopped blowing the bellows, lifted his hand to brush the wasp away, and right at that point Sindri returned, and he said, "What have you done? You've almost spoiled it." And out of the furnace he pulled the hammer Mjolnir. "You see how short you made the handle, but it is too late now. Take these gifts to Asgard and bring me Loki's head." Now in Asgard, the gods were sitting on their shiny thrones, and Odin, the king of the gods, Thor and Frey, the god of sunshine, well, they were to judge between Loki and Brock to see who had made the most wonderful things. Loki gave Odin the spear Gugner, which never misses its mark. He handed the crown with the golden hair to Thor, who put it on Sif's hair, and her hair grew out and was more beautiful than it had ever been. And to Frey he handed the ship Skidbladner, which would always find a breeze to take it wherever its owner wanted to go, and it could be folded down and put in one's pocket. Now it was Brock's turn. He handed the golden ring to Odin, and he said, "On every 9th night, this ring will cast off 8 other rings as pure and heavy as itself." He handed the boar with the golden bristles to Frey, and he said, This ball can run faster on the sea and in the air, and it can light up even the darkest night. And to Thor he handed the hammer Mjolnir. This hammer shall never fail, no matter how hard or how big that which it hits may be. No matter how far it is thrown, it will always return to your hand, and you can make it so small that it can be hidden in your bosom. No, the only fault is the shortness of its handle. So Thor took the hammer and swung it over his head, and lightning, like never seen before, flashed through Asgard, and thunder rolled through the sky. And the gods were so impressed with this hammer and thought it would be the best protection against enemies, and so it was decided that Brock had won the competition. Yeah! And now came the question, how was Brock going to get the head of Loki's shoulders? I'll give you anything in place of my head, anything. I'll have your head or nothing, said Brock. Well, all right then. You can have my head, but you can't touch my neck. Ha ha! You see, the head can't be taken off without touching the neck. It was true. So Brock had to give up taking Loki's head, but he would not leave nothing. So he picked up a big needle and some thread, and without touching Loki's neck, he sewed his lips together so tightly that Loki could do no more boasting. And that is the story of how Thor got his hammer. Well, so we have been to Scandinavia, and now it's time to travel down to sunny Greece and have a story about keeping faith and being hopeful during hard times. Every story starts at the beginning. So let's go back to the very beginning and how the world, according to the ancient Greeks, came to be. Now the gods, they lived on Mount Olympus, and they ruled over an empty world. There were no animals, no people. It was very boring, and the gods needed something to do. So Zeus, the king of the gods, he ordered the brothers Prometheus and Epimetheus to make living, breathing creatures to fill the world, and so they were sent down from Mount Olympus to live on Earth. Now Epimetheus, he was very creative, and he could make almost anything with his hands. He moulded turtles and gave them shells. He made horses with long tails and manes. He made lions, bears, tigers, wolves, giraffes, sea creatures of all kinds, birds, insects, and animals that we now know to be extinct. His brother, Prometheus, was watching, and he was not happy. He was jealous of his brother's skills. But he refused to be beaten, so Prometheus, he took some mud and mixed it with soil till it looked like something we would call clay. And from this mixture, he made the first man. Now Prometheus wanted man to be different from anything Epimetheus had created, so he made man stand upright just like the gods and gave him 2 arms and 2 legs. Epimetheus had made all of his creatures look to the ground. Well, Prometheus made man look to the stars. He worked a long time on man, and when he'd finally finished, he was burning with pride, admiring his masterpiece, and he wanted to give this man a beautiful gift, something rare and of outstanding beauty. So he looked everywhere to see if there was anything of inspiration. He looked in the grass. Nothing there. He looked in the lakes. Nothing to be found. He looked to the sky. And then a thought came to him. He knew exactly what to do, although it was risky business. Prometheus then made the difficult journey up to heaven, up Up, up he climbed, jumping from cloud to cloud till he got to the sun, and he was sweating so much he could hardly see out of his eyes, but he managed to steal a teeny tiny spark of fire, so tiny that you could hide it inside a blade of grass. Now this was a very risky business and completely forbidden, but Prometheus thought he'd got away with it, and he was very pleased with himself. Now Zeus, the king of the gods, would from time to time check on the progress of the two brothers, and on that particular day he looked down from Mount Olympus, and on the ground he saw fire. The sacred fire. Prometheus had given the secret of fire to man. Prometheus! His roar could be heard all over the world. What have you done? The most cunning and disrespectful act. For this you will have to suffer for all eternity. So Zeus tied Prometheus to a cliff with indestructible chains, and he sent eagles to peck at him. Now Prometheus could not die, but he could feel pain, excruciating pain, and the eagles would peck at him for all eternity, and all he could do was scream. Now Zeus had a plan, and with the help from some of the other gods, he formed the first woman. Now Aphrodite, the goddess of love, gave the woman the gift of beauty. Hermes, the messenger god, taught the woman eloquent speech, and Apollo, the god of music and poetry, taught the woman to play sweet music and sing. Now Zeus looked at this magnificent woman, and he named her Pandora. Pandora, the gifted one. And once she was all ready, Zeus brought her down from Mount Olympus, and he found Epimetheus, who was busy polishing some tortoise shells, and he said, "Epimetheus, I have decided to reward you for your hard work. Now, here is a bride for you. As you can see, she is very beautiful, and not only that, she is also very clever, and she can sing. I do hope that you will be very, very happy. And bride and groom must, of course, receive a wedding gift." And so Zeus presented Pandora and Epimetheus with a ceramic jar decorated with a beautiful pattern, and it had a lid on it. And he said, "Now this jar is very special. You may look at it, admire the artwork, you can even touch it, but do not, and I repeat, do not, under any circumstances, open the jar." Zeus went back to Mount Olympus with a smile on his face. His plan was to test Epimetheus and Pandora, because he knew that the more you tell someone not to do something, the more they are likely to do it. Epimetheus, well, he was delighted. He had got himself a wife, just like that. Not just any wife, but Pandora. Oh, what more could a man wish for? And so the bride and groom, they moved into a beautiful house with a view of Mount Olympus. And Epimetheus, well, he was besotted. He showered Pandora with rare and precious gifts. He gave her whatever she wanted. And the jar? Well, the jar was put in one of the rooms in the house. Epimetheus never paid much attention to it. To him it was just another jar, but Pandora, however, was growing more and more curious by the day. I wonder, the jar really is very, very beautiful. Why can't we open it? What harm could it do just to have a sneaky peek? Epimetheus knew that defying Zeus's orders could have terrible consequences, and he said, "Pandora, I love you dearly, but do not open the jar. Do you hear me? Do not open the jar. You have everything you could wish for. Now put the jar out of your mind. Don't think about the jar. Do not think about the jar. Do you hear me? Do not think about the jar. But we all know that the more you tell someone not to do something, the more they are likely to do it. Pandora did try not to think about the jar, but whenever she passed it, it was as if it was beckoning her to come closer, and sometimes she thought she could hear a faint whisper coming from inside it. Pandora, Pandora, Pandora. One day, Epimetheus had gone out to groom their horses, and Pandora was sweeping the floor in the room where the jar stood. Let us out, let us out, let us out. Pandora stopped sweeping. Let us out, let us out, let us out. The voices became louder. Let us out, let us out, let us out. Pandora dropped the broom. She walked towards the jar. Hello, Pandora. Let us out. You know you want to. Don't be scared. You can trust us. Let us out, let us out, let us out, let us out. I can't. Zeus will never forgive me. Oh, don't be scared, Pandora. You know you want to. Just a sneaky peek. Let us out, let us out, let us out. Pandora lifted her hand. Let us out, let us out, let us out. She placed it over the jar. Let us out, let us out, let us out. She lifted the lid. The lid was thrown out of her hand, and out of the jar came the most horrendous hissing sound which filled the whole room. Ah! Slimy, nasty, smelling creatures came out of the jar that looked like nothing she had ever seen before. Hello, Pandora. I'm disease, I'm pain, death, decay, rot, despair, and fear. Dark, shape-shifting entities filled the whole room, and they became small and big at any given moment. Pandora looked everywhere for the lid, and she found it at the other end of the room. She fought her way through the sticky darkness and managed to put the lid back on the jar. No, Pandora, don't shut me in. I am the most important one. You don't fool me twice. Pandora, Pandora, I am hope, and without me the world won't be able to bear the things that you have released. Pandora thought about what the voice had said, and with trembling hands she carefully lifted the lid. And out came the most wondrous smell, like sweet peas, roses and vanilla combined, and that was followed by a flickering light, like a tiny white butterfly. And the butterfly fluttered around, and then it sat itself on Pandora's nose, and it made her smile. And then the butterfly flew out the open window. Now from his prison of chains, Prometheus had seen everything unfold, and there was nothing he could do to help his creation, humankind. He was writhing and pulling at the chains, but nothing could set him free. All the evils of the world had been set free, and from then on, humans would suffer. The world would be filled with greed, fear, war, and destruction, and Prometheus, he cried with grief for the world. But then, out of his eyes, he saw a tiny flicker of light. The butterfly of hope was fluttering its wings around him, and then it placed itself on his chest just above his heart. And Prometheus stopped crying. And he said, no matter how bad things are today, tomorrow is another day and things might get better. One day somebody might take pity on me, break these chains and set me free. And then the butterfly of hope, flew out into the world, bringing comfort to humans during hard times. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Greta. It's been an absolute honor to be part of the Istanbul International Storytelling Festival. Please read and share all the wonderful stories that the world has to offer. Take care. Bye-bye.